Hey, welcome everybody. It's Weekend Report on Sooner Politics. Glad to have you with us this Saturday evening. It's been quite a weekend. I hope you're not gaining as much weight as the rest of us. Hope you're staying as healthy as possible. And it's time to shut the music up. Thank you. Need to fire my sound man, except I'm the sound man tonight. Yeah, that's right. We're practicing quarantine here, and my wife doesn't understand how to run this thing. So, you got me tonight. It's good to see you. We've got a lot of things going on here. Let's get right into it. First of all, it is Easter weekend, Saturday night. Hope you're having a good weekend. Hope your family's finding ways to observe this solemn end of the lentil season, as my Catholic mother calls it, and hope you're enjoying the fresh air and the springtime as much as you can get out and around. Let's talk about what's going on. First of all, the big news of the last, couple of months has been the global pandemic, and we've got some fresh numbers for you tonight. Let's pull those up right now. Okay, well, let's see. Got to get out of the way here of this big screen. I want to blow it up as big as I could so you could see just what's going on here with this bar chart. Okay, what you see is every day for the last, close to a month, and you see the yellow bars, that tells us how many new cases have been diagnosed. That means tested. Tested not for antibodies, but tested for the actual virus being present. So now you see what's going on here in about the last 10 days is all of a sudden they opened up the testing more. We got a hold of more tests. We weren't just testing those who were close to death and then wondering why our rate of death is so high. Sadly, the death rate hasn't really come down. Now, it's been bouncing up and around, but earlier this week, we had 16 people dying one day, spiked us up to a 5% death rate. Now, that's not good news if you're a retiree. But if you're under 65, the death rate is less than 1% on this. And obviously, that's more likely going to be likely comorbidity is the term they mean. It means you've already got a number of issues that you're struggling with. Now, there have been some just devastating cases where, you think they could do it over again, probably do it better. So we're going to take a look at that. But let's take a look at what's gone on in the last few days. We had, like I say, the 16 reported deaths. Now, that's going to be the lower bar, the red bar, down low. As you can see, we spiked up one day about 6 days ago to 16. Since then, we've come down. Now, the next day wasn't all that great, but then 3 days ago, we were down to one death in the state. So, and, we've not jumped back over 10 since then. Could this be that we're already on the downside? I doubt it. The actual case numbers keep rising. Again, this isn't total cases. This is total new cases. What we're looking at is the rate of growth. Something you've heard bandied about is the term exponential. That means, when you triple 3, you get 9. When you triple 9, you get 27. When you triple 27, I don't know the answer, okay? I didn't write it down. But again, that's called exponential growth, the explosion, the chain reaction, if you will. What we're seeing is a containment of that part of it. So even though we're growing, this is where they talk about on the bell curve that we might likely be seeing kind of nearing the top of the hill, if you will, where we're getting ready perhaps to reach the peak. Now, the models, the national and global models, predict that we're going to hit that peak. That means the most active cases in about 10 days. Okay? But again, these are models. They have drastically changed these models since a month ago. All right? A couple months ago, they were talking, we might be facing 2 million deaths in the United States. Now they're saying probably not even 100,000. So anyway, so there's that chart. Now here's a better picture to go with what we were first talking. Well, we just went into the next story. Stop there. So anyway, that's the news on the pandemic. Let's talk a little bit about the politics with the pandemic. Uh, about a week and a half ago, we had actually, the governor was found out to have been applying a riot emergency law. This is again coming from a blogger and attorney, Frank Urbanek from Oklahoma City. And shortly after he published that, the governor reconvened and called what we were supposed to call from the beginning a health emergency. If it was a riot, civil unrest, then the governor gets special powers. But if you call for a health emergency, then the state health director, if you will, or whoever has, whatever you call that title, the state director, in this case, it would be our commissioner of public health, would actually have emergency rulemaking powers. So we did that. It also called for the legislature to convene within 48 hours at 8 in the morning. They did that Monday morning. John Eccles made the call, and well, actually, it would be Charles McCall did, but Eccles pretty much is in charge of herding the cats, if you will, in the legislature. Did a fine job. They organized the Monday morning meeting very well, very healthy, very structured, orderly, and they got a lot done in a very quick amount of time. Unfortunately, the Rule 15 that Eccles spearheaded the passage of just last month, he said, we're going to pass it and then we're never going to use it. Sadly, the next day they met, which was this last Monday, they used it first thing. That calls for proxy voting. The reason why is you had about 10%, maybe 15%, that just for one reason or another couldn't or shouldn't be there. Okay, I don't have the inside details on that because, again, some of it may be private health history, and we respect that. But they certified the proxy voting, and it was a pretty thorough process of certifying it. And then they passed the governor's call. Governor doesn't get to just rule that we're in an emergency and just take power. The legislature has to agree with him and then grant him 30 days power. So we got that done. Again, the legislature at any time can revoke that. So if there's an abuse of that power, okay, that may likely happen. The emergency rulemaking does not extend to municipalities or counties. Let me repeat that. Bristow, are you listening? Altus, are you listening? Guthrie, are you listening? You don't get to call emergencies and have state statutes support whatever edict, especially you, Bristow, especially any of you who just have a mayor decides that he's going to be the king and start making rules like curfews, like you can't have visitors, or like you can't even stop and say hi to somebody 10 feet away on the street, or things like that. You can't say that a church can't convert their parking lot to a drive-in church service where everybody sits in their car and tunes into a low-frequency, low-power FM tuner and listen to the church and have some semblance of being community. This cannot stand. And fortunately, the people of Oklahoma are exerting their constitutional rights because even in this emergency, the governor, the state, the power is limited. And I appreciate the good sense of the people of Oklahoma. And look, we're for the most part being rather behaved, rather responsible. Fact is, people are a lot nicer now that we aren't in each other's face all the time. So we're getting to where we kind of miss people, even people that maybe are a little bit difficult to deal with. All right, so that's the report of what's going on. politically with the virus and medically with the virus. And I want to say a special uh, hooray for my good friend, Dr. Chris Sudduth. He's one of the physicians working at the Jane Phillips Hospital in Bartlesville. Chris was doing his job and following protocols. Unfortunately, the protocols were screwed up, and he got the COVID virus while trying to take care of somebody else. He was putting on the proper mask to protect himself when the hospital people told him he can't do that. He's got to save that for people who are known cases, not suspected cases. Guess what? Yeah, they held off the testing. They didn't make the tests available. The doctors basically had to risk themselves. Chris had a tough time. He writes about it, or actually, shared the report with Channel 8 in Tulsa. You can pull it up on KTUL.com's website. But Chris, you're a good man. You're a good Oklahoman. Chris has helped the legislature quite a bit on medical issues, especially mental health advocacy, and working with Senator Joe Newhouse on policy matters with some of the bills that Joe's been spearheading. So let's move on. Don't you get sick of talking about the virus? Don't you get sick about being the only thing in the news? Let's turn to election politics, will you? All right, let's move on. You see these guys? This is Rick West, George Fott, Mike Christian, former lawmakers in the Oklahoma House. They've left the House. Now they're going back. Rick West just served one term and then decided not to run 2 years ago. Now he's back in the race. This is over there by Heavener along the Arkansas border. Great area. Beautiful. I don't know why he wants to drive to Oklahoma City. He lives in God's country. I mean, it's beautiful. I've been by his house. Excellent. Excellent. But anyway, Rick's providing good representation in the past. Now he wants to serve there again. This is an unusual thing. George Fott. George is going back for his third tour of duty. George was a state representative when he decided to run for Congress 2012. It was an open seat. He got into a run-up with Mark Wayne Mullen, narrowly lost that, and went back. And then, of course, 2 years ago, he was one of the casualties of the bloodletting going on within the Republican Party in the House, the Republican caucus. Unfortunately, some of his colleagues in the Republican side decided to raise funds to boot him out. Well, George is coming back. And then Mike Christian. Mike ran for sheriff not too long ago against Wetzel. Unfortunately, Mike didn't get the support from his own GOP that he needed, and unfortunately, he didn't win. We could have got rid of Wetzel over there in Oklahoma County a lot sooner. But anyway, Mike is coming back for another tour of duty, serving his Midwest City State House District. Of course, George is from Muskogee. I forgot to mention that. And Rick, of course, comes from Heavener, way over there. When you get off of Highway 1, the Talamina Drive, and you get off before the border, you go north and you go right by Rick's place. Gorgeous place. Gorgeous place. So these guys are coming back, and they're not the only ones. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. What I want to talk about is the Democrats only challenged in about half of the legislative seats. That's right. I think there was, 53 seats that there was no Democrat challenger. Now, some of them, there were a couple of Republicans, maybe an independent or libertarian running for the seat. But the Republicans already guaranteed 53 of the seats in the legislature next session. 53 are already securely in Republicans' hands. That means either a candidate went unopposed, an incumbent unopposed, or maybe there's two Republicans running for it. So that's the situation there. In the Senate side, I think there's 6 Republican senators out of the 24 who are normally up in an open, Senate. Every 2 years, half of them go up because it's a 4-year term. So, and then there is one special seat because Senator Smoligo did resign. So that's what you've got going on there. I was reading a little bit on social media. The mayor of a little suburb in Oklahoma City area called the Village was just furious at the Democrat Party for not mounting challenges more. And Democrat Party's got some infighting. The radical Bernie Sanders bunch, yeah, the radical Bernie Sanders bunch has got some issues. They really got some issues. And Bernie won 4 years ago in the party against Hillary Clinton. So that's one of the little stories. It's all about this filing period. Let's move on to the next one now. And all right, we're bringing the band back together. So said Elwood and Jake. This is a little bit of fun we had with the meme. I reached out yesterday to Sean Roberts. Sean there over on, well, I guess you would call your right. Sean and Chuck Strom are donning the Elwood position. Were the founders of the Platform Caucus. 3 years ago now. And that led to pretty strong rallied positions against the largest tax increases in Oklahoma history. And there was probably a dozen or so of them, loosely, I'd say, depending on the issue, that just said, no, this is not what our party stands for. This is not what I ran on. And this is breaking faith with my constituents. And so these guys were part of that famous Platform Caucus. Well, Sean's back. He's unopposed for another term. Chuck is not back himself. I talked to him at a Christmas party this year, and he said, man, business is going really good for me right now. I am not interested in going back. And, I stood there with him and his wife, and I said, now, I tell you who'd be a good candidate is Angela here, your wife. I said, she might be a better debater than you. She studies the issues, very knowledgeable. And so, anyway, sure enough, Angela announced that she's running for the seat that was formerly held by her husband, Chuck. This would be Jinx. And Jinx, I guess, going a little bit south towards Glenpool, and then maybe a little more over towards Bixby. So Angela's going to be running for that seat. So you're going to have a chance that you might see a Strom and a Roberts. It just won't be the same Strom there. So she's one of the interesting people that is going to be a race to watch, because it's up against a very, very well-funded and supported race by the incumbent Sheila Dills. Sheila, of course, won in a race against her husband, against Chuck. So that's the case there. And there's one more I want to talk to you about. Well, let's see. Let's see if we can get this one. Yeah, this guy. Steve Copeland. Steve's a nice enough guy. I tell you what, you don't get along with Steve, it's probably your fault. He's one of those kind of guys. He's a country Democrat from Okemah. Fact is, a few years ago, when Scott Inman unceremoniously left the House, the Democrat caucus in the House put Steve in charge. And Steve helped steer the Democrat caucus through some very tough times, a couple of special sessions, and then, of course, the 2018 spring regular session. And then he sat there on the bicameral interim study, what we call the joint study on medical marijuana, instead of being back there in his district campaigning. Well, Steve lost that race, maybe because he was busy serving Oklahoma trying to make sense of a amateur-written medical marijuana law that the people passed overwhelmingly. Well, Steve left. Steve now is coming back. What makes this interesting is when he was at that medical marijuana interim study, the first day of the study, I came early and I went up to his office. There was nobody else on, I don't think anybody else on the whole floor, at least certainly not his wing on the north side of the house. I went in, there was his secretary there, LA, and sat down with Steve, nice enough guy, and I introduced myself. I said, I'm probably not as well known amongst the Democrats, but you might call me a Tea Party Republican. You know what Steve said to me? He says, Dave, he says, when the Tea Party first started, it was just as much Democrat as it was Republican. And I kind of surprised. I said, well, tell me more. And Steve said, the reason the Democrats were just as much against, or just as much identifying with Tea Party, is because it was the bailouts, the TARP, the stimulus. It was bailing out the big boys, or the too big to fail. But the mom and pops businesses got nothing. The working families got nothing. And I looked at him. I said, Steve, you're the first person I've talked to in this building who gets it. So, yeah, Steve's a Democrat, okay? He's going to vote Democrat on things, and he's going to vote for things that I wouldn't vote for, I wouldn't support. But the interesting thing here is he's somewhat in no man's land because there's just less than a handful of rural Democrats left in our state house. You've got Meredith up there in Tahlequah, and he's doing his best. He's going to vote for every gun rights thing, okay, 2A, all of it, because he doesn't, Don Spencer and the gun rights people breathing down his back. Plus, his constituents are all hunters, outdoorsmen, sportsmen. They enjoy shooting sports, and they enjoy taking responsibility for their own self-defense. And you got Ben Loring up there in Miami. He's barely squeaked back into office. And Miami's always been a pretty strong Democrat area. Out there in Chickasha, you got David Perryman. He's not even running again. And then you go down there to Little Dixie, and Johnny Tadlock left the Democrat Party and joined the Republicans. You know what? He's more conservative than probably most of the Republicans. The Democrats, the rural Democrats in Oklahoma, are fairly conservative. But the party has been taken over by the radical socialists and even the communists. It's largely an Oklahoma City party and somewhat lesser degree Tulsa metro area Democrats. And fact is, Democrats are somewhat getting ready to take over the whole Oklahoma City metro area. They're running a very strong candidate against Brian Mon for the county commission there. And in fact, it's just there's 3 seats on there. There's a Democrat seat and a Republican seat Kevin Kelvey has. And then Brian Mon, if they lose that one, the Democrats take over control. And it'll deeply affect things like, are they going to be a sanctuary county? A number of the things. Now, there's some things I'll support the Democrat. I'll side with the Democrats on some things. They are advocating for better care in our public mental health, criminal justice reform. I don't believe we are the most evil state in society, and yet our prisons seem to indicate otherwise. So we are working on that. Let's get back to talking to about Steve. Steve is going to have to, now keep in mind, his son, Sean Copeland, is Governor Stitt's Commerce Secretary. Yeah, and so where's Sean going to come down in this? Is Sean going to help campaign for Dad, like most families expect the kids to help Dad win his race? Or is Sean going to declare himself neutral, or is he going to say, no, I'm a Republican, I'm part of a Republican governor's cabinet, I'm going to support the Republican? Well, the Republican in this one is Logan Phillips. Interesting guy. Logan pretty much destroyed the notion that you got to have lots of money to win in a state house race. Logan didn't raise a dime. Logan faced primary opponents, then a runoff opponent, a very well managed runoff opponent and still beat him, and then took on Steve, the Democrat caucus leader in the House, and beat him. And Logan Phillips didn't raise any money, didn't spend any other than his own money. Now, Logan was a popular educator from Okima. Now he's got to seek re-election, Logan Phillips says, on his voting record as a lawmaker. That will be interesting. So watch that race. That's going to be one to watch. You're going to want to watch the Mike Christian trying to get back into the House in a rather Democrat area of Oklahoma City. George Fott's going to try to take on Snead and get his old seat back. Rick West, he stepped out, didn't get defeated. Now he wants back in. Lundy Kiger's the incumbent. We'll have to see what goes on there. And then, Sheila Dills and the machine, the chamber and education machine, going to prevail against Angela Strom. So those are just a few of the races, and there's plenty more. We'll be talking about some of them. But anyway, the truth is, I think it's 43 people, 43 Republicans, I think it is, got reelected this week just because nobody ran against them. So anyway, that's the news. That's what's going on in Oklahoma on this weekend. I appreciate you letting me be part of your evening. Let's click off some of these others. And, got one more thing. I want to introduce a couple of people to you. The young lady here is Liza Greavy. Liza is the most unlikely grassroots leader. I don't think she was ever expecting to be doing this. But Liza's a mama. She calls herself a mama bear. She's one of the moms and dads that are storming the Capitol on a fairly frequent basis. They're trying to protect and restore parental rights, health-making rights, education rights for parents. There's just a number of things that I tell you what, they are respected at the Capitol. And they're also funding campaigns. They're recruiting candidates. They play effective. And I want to commend her. Then the gentleman next to her, Don Spencer. Don has organized the OK2A to a whole new level. Now, Tim Gillespie founded the group a number of years ago, and 3-4 years ago, stepped aside, and Don, who had just recently retired, decided to step up and fill the void. The first bill Governor Stitt signed was the constitutional carry bill. Don did a lot of the heavy lifting to make sure it got full support. In fact, enough support that it would withstand a veto if that should happen again, such as what Governor Fallin had done. One of her last acts as a governor when it comes to legislation was, in fact, that. So I want to commend those two people. And I want to tell you, if you're grassroots, you want to get involved, these are a couple of people I could plug for you. And I'd say, you know what? Reach out to them on social media, the organizations. Don has a Facebook group called OK2A, and I'm sure he's got a website of somewhat the same kind of, you can Google it. And then Oklahomans for Health and Parental Rights on social media, as well as their Facebook group, is Liza Greavy's organization. And again, these two people tell you they are not the dictators of the organization. They just happen to be the public face of it to a large degree, but there's hundreds and hundreds of people involved. So want to give a plug to those two people, because I tell you what, we wouldn't have the good candidates running if we didn't have support for them. And these two people are part of what's organizing the grassroots to get involved and make sure our voice is heard in the Capitol. So it is Saturday night in Oklahoma. Happy Easter to everybody. And I want to thank you for being part of our weekend report. Good night.